Hello future tech leaders, I'm Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
I will start explaining all these one by one. The very first shape in which we start our integrations with is the start shape. Basically, it is the starting entry point. Usually, whenever we are creating a new process, we usually start it with no data. We avoid creating it with connector, trading partner or data pass-through. Connector is for basically directly setting up a connection. Basically, if you want to connect to any of your applications like AWS, SAP or ACL systems or any APIs or something, trading partner is for basically your data related information capturing. Data pass through. We use it in a sub process which I will explain later. Always remember thumb root. If you are starting designing your integration, always select this as no data and just click. And it is best to give it a name something like this, just that you do not have a big name. It is like this. And then after that we have our map shape. Map shape is where we perform all the transformations or the logics or transformations which we build. Majorly, they occur in the map shape. Here in the map source, you would be choosing the profile of the data that is incoming from your source application. And in your destination, you would be choosing the target systems profile in which you will be sending the data to. And here you will be having all these pre-built functions that you can use, or you can create your own custom functions. Like there can be these numeric functions and everything that you can go for, or string-based functions and everything. Then again, all these properties will be there. There will be lookups that you can perform across on this data. Then there will be date functions and everything. That is a use case of a map function. A very brief understanding. Basically, you transform your source data into target system acceptable format. Then you have your properties. Properties are basically for setting up, like variables at a global level or a local level. Basically allowing you to use. Once you set up some values in these properties, you can use those properties throughout this integration or throughout that sub process of whatever it is. Basically, it's for configuring variables in a simple term. Then you have your message shape. Message shape is basically your free from text box, allowing you to enter any data in here which you can reuse in your process. Suppose if I remove these, This is like a single line of flow. You have a stack shape. You configured a Salesforce connector. Then once you receive the data over here, you did some mapping transformations at this map shape. After that, from Salesforce, suppose you are getting 10 records here. Now, individually at your map shape, all these 10 records would be getting processed. A SAP system, it does not accept 10 records individually. And there it accepts only one single file and in a particular format. How you can achieve that? You achieve that using message shape. It has these features as all this, where you can combine documents into a single message. Where you go, you select this as current data. Basically, you would enter something like this. And then all of these 10 records after map transformation would get combined into a single batch document. And you would be able to send it to your SAP system. And then stop. Otherwise, after sometimes there would be cases where you do not want to send the data. You just want to perform some actions on it, like for each batch. You just want to assign some value or something like this, A, B, C, or there will be transformations which I will be explaining later. You can perform it using message shape. Basically, it's for altering your data flow or entering any new message in a customizable way. We primarily use it for error handling mechanisms, where once we have received data after transformation or trying to send it to target, but it failed. We just try to capture whatever data that came in before and customize it in an error format. And then send an email or something like that. That is a use case. Then we have notify shape. Notify shape works like a checkpoint for logging. Whatever you enter here will not alter or disturb your data flow or anything. Just your existing logging mechanism. Whatever you define here will be added. Say you just want to capture current date timestamp. You would go to date time type, choose a format, current date click. You can say just one or something like this. And the type of warning or information or error, like the level severity of it, you can select. In your log, it would print something like that. That is a use case of your notify shape basically. You can have it after each shape, after every few shapes. Because remember, whatever the number of times you place, this notify shape for logging will have an impact on your overall performance. Because it adds to the processing time. We have to be carefully adding it, always at the very and precise checkpoints where we need logging information. Then you have your program command. This is usually used with your atom or molecule kind of setup where you can run terminal kind of thing over here. Very rarely we have use case of this. I'll skip explaining on this much. For now, basically, if you want to run some commands and all, you can just type in your commands and everything over here. That is its use case. Then you have your process call. Process call is for basically you are designing an integration. Let me put it here. You have your integration design where you need to send employees data from per date to APHCM. Let's say ADP Payroll Systems. That's a payroll company and this handles employees' data. Now, when you are designing your integration in the main integration process, let me fold that. Employees' data, it can contain a lot of information, like basic personal info. They can also be information related to address/communication. Then there will be job information. Then there will be learning info, how that employee is learning things, his learning path. Then there will be compensation information. Now, when you are designing an integration, you do not want all of this information to be, in a single process because then it would look messy. You're trying to send 5, 6 type of information and every time you might not want to edit or deploy all of these processes. What you do is you create one main integration like main process. You fetch data from Workday. That action happens and you create 5 subprocesses. Inside each subprocess, you handle data transformations on the logics related to each of these components individually. And then again you bring it out and you push that information to your target. That is where this process call comes into picture, where basically you can route to another process. We'll be able to route to personal information, address, job learning, compensation information, all these sections individually. We'll be able to create 5 separate subprocesses from here. That is the use of this process call step. Then you have your process routes. Rishi, I have one question here. How is it different from that configure thing which we are seeing in the earlier stage, the Salesforce 2.0 configure? From this, the configure one. The configure, where we have mentioned this config, basically the methods. You were saying that it will have a method of transformation. I have 1 second. I mean before message, just before message. About this. Map step is basically for performing all the transformations at a single place. When you will be building bigger, like very complex integration, you might not have just one source for data. You could be having like multiple sources. Like once you receive value from one day, you might be asked to check some particular set of value from another system as a lookup against the incoming data and everything. That is where it becomes different in map step. If you perform everything in a single shape, it will become a very complex and big map. You try to segregate into smaller section units where you can easily modify it out. That is how it differs from it. And in map you can. Basically the thing is, when there are complex transformations and on a granular level, we need to do some more exercises. At that point itself, we have to use that. The other thing, which is you call it process call. And what exactly the use case for this map? Can you just give me some example, just like the one you shared with this? From your Salesforce, you are getting your data in a JSON format file. But your SAP system only accepts XML format files. How do we handle that transformation of data? We handle it using MapShape.json to XML conversion. And suppose SAP is sending you there will be some fields which have length of 15. Sorry, Salesforce sends you some fields which have length of 15. But whereas in SAP for that same field, length is limited to just 10. You will have to perform, some kind of length trimming. All those kind of actions you perform using MapShape. Basically, it's to perform or alter your data, perform any kind of transformations or logics on it. Next, we have this process route. Now we have built this kind of integration design, where we have been processed. We fetch from Workday. We have these files or processes. And then we bring it all out, we send it to ADP. Now, whenever we are running our integration, we do not want to, run all these files or processes. Based on a particular value change or something, we just want that particular subprocess to be triggered. Now there are some, usually like whatever data we have, they have this field as last modified at. Basically, it's a timestamp. Suppose with your employee information, each of these individual subprocess section has this last modified timestamp value. Now, using process route, what you can do is you can set it up something like this. Whenever your last modified at is greater than your, last integration execution timestamp. Only that particular section will go ahead. Basically, only if your personal info was changed, then it would only go to personal info. It would avoid, unnecessarily going to your address section, job information section, or compensation section like that. That is a use case of process routing. Basically, you check for a particular value. If that matches, you allow process to be routed to that particular subprocess. Otherwise, you skip it. That unnecessary routing does not occur. Is it kind of a filter? Is it kind of a filter? Filter, but at a process level. Whatever processes you create using process call, you control them using process route, basically. If you have, it's kind of a filter for just for processes only, nothing else. Then you have your data process. Data process allows you to perform actions at all the documents that are incoming to it. Suppose from your Salesforce you got 10 documents, then your data process would occur for all these 10 documents. This kind of functions that are allowed in this are basically performing encodings, decodings, combining documents. If you want to perform some custom scripting on all the documents, you can do that. You can perform a search replace. You can split documents. You can zip it, unzip it. You can perform certificate level encryption using PGP encrypt, decrypt. All these actions are allowed on it. That would be occurring. Majorly used ones are a search, replace, zip, unzip, split, combined. That is the use case of data process. Then we have find changes. We almost never use this ship. I haven't come across as users until now in any of my integration designs. Basically, it's a process, it's a shape which allows you to track changes made to a document. You know. And since it was last executed, what it will do is it will store the information and check if there were any changes. Then again, you will be able to send it to an add, update or delete path. It kind of restricts your action. It's best to avoid using it and rather directly perform that action using other logical shapes. There is a use case of find change steps. We never use it almost. Next are three important shapes about catching. Caching is basically each time. Suppose you are retrieving data from your source. Let me explain it this way. You have some orders which you from coming in from your e-commerce, API from your Amazon. Suppose you have your orders incoming, which again you have to send it to your database. Now again, these orders will have a price and different people are ordering them in different countries. Currency rates are set, once towards the start of the day. Again, for whatever, suppose your integration is basically sources Amazon, you process your orders and push it to a database. Now for each of this, you want to perform currency rates conversion. And store this information in, just say, native currency or something. And for all your orders, it is a generic one of dollars. What you would do is you would run the currency rates once, store it in a cache and reuse it throughout your integration without having to fetch the currency value again and again each time your integration is running. Or if you want to perform a lookup, like that kind of thing. What you would do is you would set up an active cache. Click on Create Cache. You would select your profile. Once that is done, you would just save it. Once that is done, it would be saved here. Then you have retrieved from cache. Once the values are stored in a cache, you can retrieve it here or in your map shape or different shapes also you can retrieve it. And again, sometimes you will also want to, refresh your cache or just remove a particular value after it has been used, that you can add another set of value. You use a remove from cache. For now, just focus on understanding the functionality or like just a use case of the cache. Later, we'll get in detail with all the granular information about it. But did you understand the use case of it far? I assume yes. Yes, we get the understanding. It's clear to me. You have a branch 1 and everything would be executed sequentially. Suppose you have 3 branches. Whatever you set up, all of that action would occur in a sequence. Whatever comes until here, that is in a single line, in a single pipeline. Then from the branch shape, whatever shapes you put in branch 1 will get executed first line by line. Once branch 1 is completed, then it would go to branch 2, then it would go to branch 3 for execution. Now let's bring in its use case. This is how like branch comes in handy. You get your data from your Salesforce system as a single big document, suppose about 100 documents. You perform split action. It will. All these 100 documents would be as in a single batch. They would be split into individual files. You store all of them in a cache. Now, against that each value you fetch the data from you. To suppose get some data from NetSuite. You do that. You get your data from NetSuite. You perform your transformations in map shape. You directly cannot push the data just from NetSuite or Salesforce alone. You perform a lookup against the cache values of Salesforce and NetSuite and do your transformations. And you then send it to SAP. That is where this branch shape comes in handy for case like this, where you know you have to do lookup against or like store the value in a cache or all this kind of actions where you have to perform multiple things, but you do not want to perform them in a single line. You want those actions to occur sequentially. Another simple explain, another type of use case if you want to understand. We are fetching the data from two sources. One is from Salesforce and second is from NetSuite. As firstly, this data will be transformed to Salesforce alone because the NetSuite Salesforce data is created to cache. The NetSuite data would get transformed. And then it will extract the data from it to like cache and then move for transformation. You can do something like that against the value. Suppose in NetSuite you have this ID field. Against each ID, you can match the ID that are coming in from Salesforce. You can have both your profiles against using the data from both your Salesforce and NetSuite. You perform data transformation. A branch will be used when we have two or more data sources. That is one use case of branch. There are other use cases as well. I'll explain the other ones. Why we need branch? We can do it in a sequence as well. Like after split document, we add cache and then NetSuite and map the things. After adding to cache, it is not allowed to map to another shapes basically. That is a restriction. Because once that action is not allowed, basically, after caching, you need to have your another line of path, basically. That is what. Can we do one thing here? Like from when branch, we are splitting. We can in the first step, we can directly transform the data instead of adding it to cache. You can do that if you do not have another source of data. I'm asking that question that if I have another source of data, in second step, it will process for another data source. That is why this caching comes into picture. You can use the data from Salesforce also inside this map. You can combine the data of two sources basically. I cannot use a map like two maps at one time. You can have multiple maps. We use that. You can also place a map here as well. Perform some transformation on it, store it in a particular target profile and store that converted data into cache. You can do that as well. We do that many times. That is all this occurs. I know. What was my understanding is like in the branches, we are having these things. 1, 2, and 3. These tasks should be parallel. Parallel run. Is it correct? Sequential. Sequential, as in the very first step is like the add catch. The second thing is like the NetSuite one, and then the third one is the mail. And because we have a restriction to have this add catch, with the add catch, we cannot we cannot put any other step after this. That is what the restriction is, yes. Suppose if we remove this add cache, for now suppose, and just suppose we will be having only two things. NetSuite and the mail one, the two step. Now my point is, what is the need of in that case? I am seeing that only in case of this kind of a scenario, where we cannot define any other step, which will be the last step. Then only this will be into this. This can be a use case. Or is there any other use case you can think of, or like you can just let us know. Because anyway, we are doing a sequential. It's just as good as the sequential thing. There will be cases. Let me come back to this example, where you have your main process. You fetch from Workday. Let's just copy this and just tweak it a little bit. You have your main process. You fetch from Workday. Instead of 5 sub-processes, you have 5 branches and you send to ADP. Now, or let's just take some other payroll application as Altebro. What? There is a restriction at Altebro. It does not allow you to just update any particular individual section. Like just personal info or address info. They have restriction regardless of change to any particular of these portraits. They want all of these 5 portraits information to get updated. And they only allow it in a sequence. Basically, they want personal info to be updated first, then maybe job information to be updated. Second, then the address information to be updated as. Third, then learning, then compensation information. In cases like this, your branching strategy would come handy, where you have to update this sequentially. You mean to say just Altebro? If you say that Altebro will only accept the changes one at a time in these kind of objects. For example, personal information, what we will do, we will first update. We'll create a branch for these 5 objects. One for personal job and on. And individually these objects will send to the Altebro. Yes, for information. Personal information is updated on top of that, the job information on top of address, and like that it will happen. Can't we manage these things into this 5 branches thing itself? We can put it the branch itself. For example, we have 5 branches in between Altebro. And there we can first do the transformation on personal info, then job info, and then address, and then learning, and at a one go we will dump everything, every consolidated files to the same. algebra. Is it not the approach we can follow somehow? If your integration, I get your point. If your integration of very simple design where you do not have, a lot of logics, transformations, then in that case, this would work very simply. You get it from Workday, you put up 5 branches. In each 5 branches, you have one map for each of these. And then you just combine it and push it to Algebra. That is your one simple use case. But your business comes to you and says, we want our lookup action to be performed against some other value in Workday. Suppose for job information, they want you to go and check foundational object information like cost centers or your department level information. If any of it is updated, they just want you to go and do a check. If you keep writing all of these logics in one level, here it would be, everything is on one particular page. It would look little messy. And it would. If something breaks in that particular flow, your whole integration flow breaks. There comes this concept of modularity, where you break everything into small segments that each segment is independent of other segment. Basically, if you're playing around with job information, your personal information, address information, all those integration parts do not break. That is how you play around with it. You create 5 branches and in the 5 branches, you put 5 different sub-processes. By processing each one individually, that anyone you touch or play around with the others do not get disturbed. Let me go back to the system. Cleans shape. Basically, it is like this. Find step changes shape, which I was telling like we rarely use it. Similarly, it is an extra step cleans. We rarely use it because it unnecessarily adds more time to the performance and everything. Whereas the actions that this provides, like rejecting a document or giving a document or fixing a field, you can perform it in your map shape itself. We never use this step. It's just like a necessary gimmick kind of thing. I have a question. In road shape, should we have to set a default also? Is it necessary? We don't need to set it. It will be by automatically. You will have to configure a default part. You do not want to, you can just put a stop shape there, basically. Instead of, having all this, if you don't want any action to be performed in it, you can just simply have a stop shape there, or something like you just configured a mail action or something like that, or in your logging that this came through to default path. There was no execution for it, something like that. Then moving to this decision shape. Decision shape will always give you true or false value. It is for performing comparison against any of these things. You can either compare your profile values or you can compare your timestamps or profile values against any lookup from another source system or against some hard-coded value. You can perform this action upon. That is a use case of decision shape. Then you have your exception shape. Basically, when you capture your errors, if you're after your map shape, if you are seeing any error happening. You usually put up an exception shape for error handling mechanisms, where if you have that particular line path in your pipeline, if it fails executing or something kind of action you want to perform on it. You want to stop executing the entire process and mark all documents as failed or continue executing other documents, kind of things. You can perform this action using exception shape. There are cases where even you're designing an integration. Suppose you are trying to upload, you're working for an automobile company where you're updating sales data from one system to another where the business is. If any particular transaction fails, just stop and do not process the remaining transactions for now. There, this check mark, all this kind of things comes in handy. That is the use of exception shape basically for raising an exception to your process. To either allow it to process or to just hold the process there. And again, you will be able to configure your error message here and everything which we will be looking into at a later stage. Then you have your stop ship. Stop ship is basically for your branches, sub-processes or your outpaths. If you want to continue executing your process through that part or you want to put a stop to it, you just keep this in check accordingly. If you uncheck it, it would stop executing to your path over there itself. And then you won't be able to, go down for the execution. Suppose you notice, let's remove road. Have your 3 branches. Now, during this course of action, you got your data coming in from map. You performing some mail action here and you had this regular stop. It would go down this path. And second, after this first one, your second run sequential run game in you perform some actions here. And then you had your third process, sub process called here, where again sub action was happening. But by mistakenly you kept this unchecked. What this would do is, it would just stop your integration flow here. It would not flow to the sub process. You need to be very careful when playing around with this. Usually, it is always kept checkmarked for a safer side. There is a use case of this. Then your return document ship, which I already explained. Basically, it's for returning them from a sub-process to your main process. We only use it in a sub-process, always towards the end of it. If you want to bring out something into your main process, you use a written document. What this will does is it will, whatever the documents that are reaching this step here, they will be brought back outside to your main process and you can use them here. And this arrow or this line that you see it is the output of your written document shape, which you can use for further processing. That is the use of it. Flow control. I will not touch for now, but to simply put it out, it is for enabling parallel processing or some that kind of options or like batched runs. I'll explain this at a pretty later stage, like after almost another week only. We will not be touching it until then because that would require some more deep understanding about Boomi before we touch this. Let's look at business rule for now. Business rule is an enhanced version of decision shape where you can have your inputs. Suppose some feed from this. If suppose something like this department. You can set up a condition and department is not equal to static or department equals to static. You can say HR save. You can also insert like this one. Something like this. You can customize your error messages itself for your business. Rule failures. You can have multiple logics or functions as well. All these kind of numeric functions, string functions. You can perform these. And for like whatever you can perform this action upon and you can have multiple rules allowed. That is the basic simple understanding for business rule for now. You can have multiple rules, multiple nested conditions and customized error message in case of a condition is not met. That is the use case for this business rule. Business rule. It will have this accepted, rejected path. Basically, it's the same thing. True, false kind of thing. That is the use case of this. Then we also have try-catch shape. Try-catch shape is used for basically capturing errors in your process for error handling mechanism. Let's simplify this a little for now. Let's remove plan. Let's remove this. Let's bring this down here. This also to simplify the explanation for now. You got your data from Salesforce. You perform some map actions on it. You combine it here in the message shape. Then again some more transformations you did and then you push it to SAP. Now there are chances It can fail up at any of this point at your map shape or at your message shape or in your sub-process call or while sending to a SIP. To capture all these errors, we use tray catch shape. It allows you to set up a retry mechanism. Suppose nothing fails. At SAP, there is a downtime running for like 5 minutes or 1 minute or 2 minutes. You can set up a retry count here where it will retrieve your process in an incremental manner. First rate would be for 10 seconds. Like the first retry would be immediately. Second retry would be for 10 seconds. Third one for 30. Fourth for 60 seconds. And then the fifth retry kind of thing. You can set up the retries in an incremental manner. Whatever the errors that occur here will get captured and sent down the catch path. There is a use case of try-catch, basically for retrying and to capture whatever failures occur and to let your process continue executing for other documents and not just stop with that particular single document break. Now, once all those failed documents or errors will come down to catch path. Here you can configure a message with your error format or something like that and perform a mail action like send an email alert to your support teams or application teams about that error and have put it to a stop channel. That's about the tray catch. These are all the shapes in Boomi that we need to look for. In branch tape, we have, let's say, 3 branches. First branch fails. It will not affect the second branch. And rest of the process continue and succeeded. But we don't need to hold the first process. We need to trigger the Boomi process from the initial point or there is any mechanism to rerun the process from the shape. There are multiple ways of going around this. First, if your branch 1 fails and if you have other 2 branches, you can design your error handling in such a way that it continues executing your second and third branch. But in case of a failure, you will have to re-execute your whole integration. It cannot just go down the first branch and skip the second and third branch for next time. Let's say we have a couple of documents that we are feeding to branch 1. And then let's say we have 10 documents that we are feeding to branch 1. And out of those 10 documents, let's say 2 are failing. How will system respond? It depends on how you have set up your error handling. In general, it would allow you to process your remaining 8 documents. Regardless of if I don't put any error handling. It will allow you to continue, executing the other 8 documents. And how can I be notified of the documents that are failing? Again, you will have to use notify shape for it, or you can simply, if you don't want to do that, you can just take your logs. It wouldn't have at your map shape or whatever logical shape it is failing. It will have the information about the failed documents, But it is advisable to have a notify shape kind of thing there, where you know you're capturing the document related information about what failed in it. Like there will be very less cases where you know you're not doing error handling or these kind of things. Even for your simple integrations, it will become your focus point of area. To set up your error handling mechanisms properly, because business does once your integrations are up and running in production. Business does not want you know any kind of implications during the business hours, and they want the support teams or the application names to be notified immediately. We will be learning to handle all that kind of things, scenarios properly. Can we use a try-case shape, error shape and notification shape to be able? Yes. There is no restriction and such. Can you show me the scenario, how we can use that? You want to use try-catch, error shape and notification. Error shape, you are talking about this exception. Now you got your data from Salesforce. You put up a try-catch to capture any errors. Your map does the transformations. You combined your documents and hear it. Let's move this. Let's simply buy it for explanation for now. Before sending to SAP, you just locked all the documents that are being sent to SAP. Ten documents came in 10 documents. We're trying to send here, but only 8 passed to fail. All those failed. 2 ones would get captured here in this. In the shape here, in your, exception shape, they would be captured. Now it does not need to be last, like 9th, 10th document. Suppose in between your third document failed, it would get captured here and it would be sent to catch path. Then your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth document would be running again. Ninth one failed. It would get captured here and sent here. Then the 10th document would continue getting executed. And then here in your mail, your third and 9th document about them. You would be receiving an email. Again, instead, if you do not want your notify shape here, you can set it up over here just for failed documents. You don't want unnecessary extra logging kind of thing. Only in case of error out months, you can set it up here. Like with the profile element value of ID, something like just ignore this for now. We capture some field value. You can have it as employee ID kind of thing. You can just to showcase it for now. Your profile HR employee profile. Objected, it would be employee ID. And you can select the severity, like this employee failed. And again with what failed. And in your 2, you would set up current data. You want to capture whatever the incoming message came from this exception. This is how in synchronous mechanism you can use this. I think there was one question from others. Can we pass data between branches? You can do that by using add to cache. Basically whatever, suppose in first branch you perform some action. In second you can perform some action, you add to cache. Again in third you perform some action. There is another fourth branch. You perform some action, but you also want to use data from second. You retrieve whatever you stored there in the cache over there in your fourth and reuse it. You can perform that kind of thing. Now we will set up your Boomi accounts. Can any one of you share your screen in the browser and open up your company account? Or just open a platform Boomi. We will sign up if you haven't already received access to your company accounts for Boomi. You do not have this access here to your team's account, company's account, Boomi account. I need sign up. Then you can just enter your business email address. You can continue. Give your company's name and everything. Just scroll down. You should have received an email. You can just click on Close. Go to Services Integration. This is a service that will be primarily focusing on integration. You can click on it. You can bookmark and store this page if you would like to do that. If you follow all that, you can just crossmark all this. You can click on create a separate folder for your practice. Just give it a name as sandbox or something. Rec new. From Nebraskam also. You can do it from here. From the drop down new folder. You can name it as Playground Sandbox, whatever you want to. Inside this demo folder, you can play around by adding your components or a folder in other ones, something like that. Create new process. Create new. Nota. Click on and just click on Save. Also this new process word is written here above. Search all steps. You can rename your process as well. If you go above, go towards center the page. Here you can rename this process from here. You can provide a name to your processes. And just click on Save. That will save every process. These are not automatically saved. Each time you perform action, you ensure you just click on Save. Otherwise, you will lose your steps, whatever changes you are doing. Everyone, just follow the steps. If you do not have a movie account, sign up for a trial account using your business email address. And for now, just explore around these shapes and everything. Look around. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.